Hi and welcome to the Cult of Crafting. Today I'll show you how to make two versions of wood pallets, and I'll also make a futuristic pallet that'll fit the over-the-top look of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Actually, I hadn't really planned on making this video, I just needed something to put some stuff on and I got carried away a bit. Anyways, let's get started. I'll be using coffee stirrer sticks for this project. You can grab a handful at your local coffee place or just buy a big bag of them. They don't cost much. I won't try to make the pallets to scale. Next to a Games Workshop miniature, a standard pallet would be the size of a stamp. The coffee stirrers I have are about 5mm wide. Popsicle sticks are quite large in comparison, so they work better as large planks than something like this. We'll make the wood pallets first, then we can tackle the Sci-fi pallet afterwards. Let's glue some sticks together. There are quite a few ways to construct wood pallets. A couple of ways they differ are the amount and spacing of the top boards, and whether the top and bottom of the pallet are separated using blocks or boards. I'm gluing 2 sticks together for the separating board. For the blocks, I'll glue 3 sticks together and then I'll cut them to size. Let's make the one that uses blocks first. I want the blocks to be square, so I'm measuring out segments of 5mm. I start by cutting up the sticks. Now, the much easier way to make the blocks is to use balsa wood, and I do have some lying around, but I'm using the sticks to illustrate the point, in case all you have to hand is coffee stirrers. Really, you can use anything to make the blocks, it's just simpler to paint them when everything's made of wood. You can cut these with a knife, but they're a bit hard to get through, which is why balsa wood would be a better option. So I'm using a razor saw and a miter box. We're gonna need 3 sticks for the short side of the pallet and 10 for the longer side. Now, the cool thing about cutting the sticks this way is that they're almost guaranteed to have an even length. Perfect. Since the plan is to stack some crates on them, I want them to be large enough to accommodate enough crates that a few infantry-sized models can use them as cover. You could probably shave a centimeter off the length and width, but if you make them too small they won't serve much purpose in the game. Let's build the pallet starting from the base. I started by gluing the 9 blocks to 3 of the longer 7cm boards, 1 at each end and 1 in the middle. I used my cutting mat as a guide to place the middle one on the first board, and then I aligned the other ones, comparing them to the first board. Then I proceeded by gluing on the 3 6cm boards on the opposite sides of the blocks, running across the longer boards. It was a bit fiddly to get the corners to sit at 90 degrees. If I were a clever man, I'd have made a jig to make it easier. So, now we're gonna place the top layer. I find that it's easier to get the spacing right if I place the ends and the middle board first. Now that I have the sides and the middle in place, I'll place the last boards. It's up to you to decide how much space you want between your boards. Some pallets have a lot, some have none at all. In this case it should be fine to just eyeball it, but you can measure it if you want to. After placing the boards, I'm making small adjustments, trying to make sure they're straight, evenly spaced and aligned at both ends. I'm careful not to get glue all over, cause I'm gonna use washes directly on the wood and the glue will stop it from soaking into the boards, which is what I'm after. I'll add more detail later, but first let's look at an easier way of making pallets. We'll be using the double layered sticks that we glued together at the beginning of the video. I cut 3 of them to be 6cm long and I made another 12 5cm boards, so this pallet will be 1cm shorter and narrower than the first one. I start by laying out 2 5cm boards and then gluing on the double boards, starting with the sides for stability. Once the sides are in place, it's easy to place the one in the center. For the top layers I wanted to have less spacing, so I used more boards than on the previous version. But other than that, the procedure was pretty much the same. So we didn't have to deal with all the tiny blocks in this version, which saves us some time. Also, the previous version had an extra layer of boards compared to this one. After the glue had dried, I wanted to give them some texture. The coffee sticks are quite smooth, so I wanted to roughen them up a bit. I used a steel brush, hoping to make wood grain, but it was mostly superficial. I used a pointy tool to give the impression of nails. I used the same tool to try to make some deeper wood grain on the pallets. I also broke a few boards on the pallet to make them look worn. Okay, I'll be making the futuristic pallet out of cardboard. I'll start by making the platform and I'll make it the same size as the large wooden pallet, 6 by 7 centimeters. To make some supports for the platform, I'll make 3 T-shaped beams out of the same cardboard that I used for the platform. I cut 2 strips of 5mm cardboard, which I then cut into 6 pieces with a length of 6 centimeters each. To make the T-shape, I simply apply PVA glue along the edge of one piece and then I place it in the center of another piece. The glue grips the cardboard fairly fast, so I take care to get it right in the first go. Once I have the 3 T-beams, I glue them in place on the platform. Like previously, I'm using my cutting mat as a guide. One of the beams was a bit crooked, so I placed that one in the middle, where it's less noticeable. If you're gonna put stuff on the pallet later on that'll cover most of it, there's really no reason to add more detail, but let's do it anyway. I take a bit of cardboard from an old box and square it off so it's 1 centimeter shorter and narrower than the platform. I'll place it in the center of the platform, so that'll create an edge of 1/2 centimeter, which ended up being a bit much for my taste. The secret to make anything look sci-fi is to use 45-degree angles. An easy way to do this is to just cut off the corner of a square. I'll do something a little different and make an inset on each side of the square. I'm making the insets 5mm deep and I'm cutting them at a 45-degree angle. And now we have this lovely sci-fi shape that I'll glue on the platform using thinned down PVA glue. The cardboard is thick enough that it won't warp from it. Somebody gave me a bunch of these little plastic thingies from something called diamond paintings. They're not completely round, but instead have an irregular surface that could look like a rivet that's been hammered. They're a bit big, but I thought I'd try them out for this project. I decided to just eyeball the placement of the rivets. I doubt anyone's going to notice that they're a bit off. And now we've built a sci-fi pallet. I painted the wood pallets using washes and used my airbrush to paint hazard stripes on the Sci-fi palette, which I finished off with some weathering. So, what are the takeaways from this random project that I didn't mean to start in the first place? Well, I'm quite pleased with the results for the amount of effort it takes to make the pallets. The wooden ones take about 20 minutes to build, once you've cut out the bits you need. And the basic structure of the cardboard one only takes about 5 minutes. Then there's adding details and painting, which takes as much or as little time as you're willing to spend. I actually think the wood pallets look quite realistic. If you want to do the first version, I'll recommend getting some balsa wood for the blocks because it's just easier to work with. Most of the time you'll probably pile stuff on top of them, so there won't be any need to add all the details. If I had to improve on the details, I'd try to find smaller rivets. These are okay, but they're a bit too large for my taste. For the sci-fi shape, I'd make the surrounding bit into the raised portion instead, with a sci-fi shaped hole in the middle. I initially discarded that idea, but it's probably easier than I first thought. In my next video, I'll cover them with tarps and camo netting, making all this work having been in vain. If you want to see more builds from me, check out this video. Thank you so much for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.